G'day there, James here. In this video, we're going to be looking at many different topics of interest to do with money. We're going to be looking at a comparison of money to currency by checking out one of Mike Maloney's videos. He's got a really good video talking about money. We're going to play that and add some different interpretations and view it from a different perspective. And then we're also going to look at a lot of Facebook comments I've had from my latest video I posted very recently. I highly recommend you check that out as well, about a brief history of money and why Bitcoin sucks because it's centralized and insecure. So we're going to be looking at many things to do with money, including the 3 functions of money and the approximately, give or take, 7 different characteristics of money. And the more of these that are fulfilled to a higher standard, the better the quality the money is. Because you can have money or currency that's bad, you can have money and currency that's good or better. I don't think we've really ever had a good money yet. But that's one of the reasons why I'm making this video, to help you start to think in more detail and depth about money. Why it's a necessity for society to thrive, and why it's in such a bad, complex, complicated position today, and what we can perhaps do to start changing that. And then we can actually have power back, well, sorry, not back, but to the people for the first time ever. Just a quick caveat I feel is important to make. I just need to declare that I am not omnipotent and I am not infallible. I'm not pretending to be the Pope here. So I do make mistakes and I do the best I possibly can to correct those mistakes in the future. As I've said in previous videos, I don't care about being wrong because I care about being right. If someone can present a better argument to something I say and convince me otherwise that I was wrong and something else is the truth, the facts, fantastic. That's great. That's what I want. There's a saying, I half resonate with it. I hold strong opinions loosely. Hold strong opinions loosely. So I'm very confident and secure about my opinions and facts that I know. But again, if new information comes along that contradicts my current beliefs, I don't even like to use that word belief, but my current knowledge, then I'm with the facts, whatever makes sense. Okay, first of all, we're going to be looking at this video from Mike Maloney, which I do respect and feel that he's got good intentions, though everyone makes mistakes, and that's just what we're here to do, point out the mistakes and agree with the good things that he and the other members in his team here are saying. Following this video, then we're going to be looking at those Facebook comments and reading out some really good ideas that people are having, and some very good comments. I'm not going to be reading out these comments to poke fun at anyone. It's that they're really good, they're challenging, and get you to think and understand your position even deeper. With that being said, let's crack into this.
Your true wealth is your time and freedom. Money is just a tool for trading your time. It's a container to store your economic energy until you're ready to deploy it. But the whole world has been turned away from real money and has been fooled into using currency. A deceitful imposter that is silently stealing your 2 most valuable assets, your time and your freedom.
So the time and freedom, yes, that's accurate. Money, currency, well, that's why we're watching this. Let's see if they can actually point out the real distinctions and identify what characteristics differentiate and separate money from currency. Let's see if it's done.
Welcome to the rabbit hole.
We are entering a period of financial crisis that is the greatest the world has ever known. The wealth transfer that will take place during this decade.
The funny thing is you can apply that little short clip to practically any time through history. Any time through history, they're always suffering from some kind of financial crisis. That's just the way of the world when you have centralized currency.
Is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Wealth is never destroyed, it is merely transferred, and that means that on the opposite side of every crisis there is an opportunity. The great news is that all you have to do to turn this crisis into your great opportunity is to educate yourself. I believe that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is your own education. Education on the history of money, education on finance, education on how the global economy works, education on how all of these guys, the central bankers, the stock market, how they can cheat you, how they can scam you. If you learn what is going on and how the financial world works, you can put yourself on the correct side of this wealth transfer. Winston Churchill once said that the further you look into the past, the further that you can see into the future. This program is all about creating your own crystal ball, being able to gaze into the future, being able to change this crisis, the greatest crisis in the history of mankind, into your great opportunity. The hidden secrets of money, some of them are hidden in plain sight. They're like right in front of you. The way the monetary system works is something that isn't actually hidden away from all of us. It's out in the open, but it's complex and people just they can't see how it works. It's hard for them to imagine that we're living in such a hoax. Others are meant to be secret, but the truth is slowly coming out, like the Federal Reserve being a private corporation and not really part of the U.S. government. But when I started studying this, what I found was that there was no place that I could point people to where they could get it all in one spot. And so I basically decided to write my book about it and consolidate monetary history, economics, the markets, fundamentals of gold and silver. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors in economics, and I've sort of made it my job to lift the fog for people.
Welcome to Egypt. This is where it all began. Roughly 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians started using gold and silver as their predominant form of currency. But it was not yet money. The pieces of gold and silver that they were using were odd sizes and weights, odd purities, so it still was not interchangeable, where each unit is the same as the next. This meant that nothing really had a price yet. You couldn't put a price of so many coins on something because they didn't have coins yet. Trade was still difficult. It was still a guessing game when it came to the exchange of values.
There's actually some sources that say money initiated in China and they weren't actually using gold and silver because I don't think there was much gold and silver around China, or they just hadn't discovered it at that time. I think, don't quote me on this, they were using jade or some other kinds of precious metals, perhaps even iron and copper. And they even had a coin where they would make a hole in the middle so then they could put like a rope through it and carry it on like a bandolier and carry that around for easier use. You know, you could just pop it over your shoulder, you had all your whatever the coins were exactly made out of.
The reasons that we are in the financial mess that we are today globally is that people do not understand the difference between currency and money. Currency is a medium of exchange, a unit of account. It is portable, durable, divisible, and something called fungible. Fungible means that each unit is the same as the next unit. A dollar in my pocket buys the same amount as a dollar in your pocket. Money is all of those things plus a store of value over a long period of time.
So that's the thing. Currency still is a store of value over a long period of time. Sure, it can depreciate through inflation, but imagine if there was no inflation. Imagine if a fiat currency was capped, say like Bitcoin at 21 million. Well, then it would be deflationary. And then suddenly fiat currency becomes money. Well, it's like, well, they're already the same thing in the beginning because it is a store of value. It's hard to say that oranges are a store of value because they rot quite quickly. Or, you know, chicken breasts, they've only got a short shelf life compared to something like mackerel, tinned mackerel. Well, that's going to last a lot longer. It's a longer store of value. And that's actually what happened in some federal prisons in America, and probably still happening today. They use that as a currency. And it's multi-purpose. It's not so much that it has intrinsic value, even though it does, because people say, oh, gold and silver has intrinsic value, but fiat currency doesn't. You know, you have intrinsic and then instrumental value, where a fiat currency may be backed up by gold, and they then call it instrumental. But when you really think about it, we'll get into a little bit later, it really is just, they're both intrinsic. So it'd be more accurate to say that gold and silver are multi-purpose rather than trying to rely too heavily on the word intrinsic versus fiat currency. And fiat currency still is multi-purpose as well. In some countries where there's hyperinflation, the people end up making the money into hats and bags because at this point it's become worthless through the hyperinflation. It's worth more as a bag than it is as bloody money. Or, you know, as a currency, as money to exchange with people. But those purposes of making bags or hats or burning it, you really can't do much with physical paper. And then when it comes to digital currency, well, that's not multi-purpose at all. You can't do anything else but use it for a single purpose. And really, a money should just be a single purpose. And obviously that has been very difficult to achieve in the past. Now we have technology. We want a currency, a money that is single purpose, not multi-purpose. Like gold and silver, the multi-purpose being that gold is used for jewelry, same with silver, and you can put it in some kind of technology, transistors, there's other multiple purposes, and gold and silver should be used just as those purposes. It should have nothing to do with a money or currency anymore, because we need to create a digital currency that is a better form of money according to the functions and the characteristics of money, which we'll come into shortly. Because it would be great to have a physical money too, like cash. But in today's world, really think about it, it's just too hard. You can't do it unless it's for a very small area. There was Liberland, I think, is trying to declare itself as a country. It's basically, I don't know, a couple hundred acres or something in Europe somewhere. I might visit there, we'll see. Oh no, it's actually very difficult to get there. You have to go on a boat and there's police everywhere. Anyway, and they could, if you had a place like that, they could issue their own currency, but it's really only got value on that farm, or that couple hundred acres. It's no good. But if you look at Bitcoin, which is a bad currency, but it has some good points, one of those being it's worldwide accepted. Well, it has worldwide value. It has the same value whichever country you're in. But not many people actually accept it as a form of currency at this point, though that will increase in the future, which really isn't too much of a good thing, unfortunately. But if you had a really good digital currency, that would be a good thing for a higher adoption rate.
Financial planners, bankers, your accountant, they don't understand the difference between currency and money. The currency in your pocket is a medium of exchange. It's a unit of account because it's got numbers on it. It's somewhat durable, it's portable, it's divisible in that you can make change, and it's fungible. $1 in my pocket buys the same amount as $1 in your pocket. But because governments can print more and more and more of it and dilute the currency supply, it's continually transferring wealth out of your pocket, out of your bank account, to the government and to the banking system. The reason that gold and silver are the optimum form of money is because of their properties. It's an easy medium of exchange because gold and silver store a large amount of value in a very small area.
No, in the past, sure, it's been a reasonable form of exchange, but today, if you're trying to buy a house with gold or silver, like how much you're going to take? Like, are you really going to want to carry that around? It's not a very good medium of exchange. And if you need to make it divisible. Like if you have, he's going to go into the other points like fungibility, etc. Maybe we'll wait till that and then I'll explain at the end.
A unit of account. Pure gold has the same value all over the planet. So an ounce of gold buys the same amount here in Egypt as it would in China or in the United States. It's durable. The same gold that Egyptians were using in trade 5,000 years ago is still here with us today. It does not corrode. It's divisible. You can make change with it. It's very portable. You could use something like oil as money. It's just that you can't carry around a barrel of oil on your back. It's Fungible, pure gold is the same wherever it is on Earth. Pure silver is the same wherever it is on Earth.
So divisible, it's not very easily divisible, because to make gold divisible, if you've got, say, a gold ingot or a silver one, you need to have the machinery to be able to mint it into coins. And if we look at past history, when private investors would make minting plants, well, they weren't able to actually do it because the Royal Mint in England or whatever other country said, no, only we're allowed to do that. We have control of that. So if you have gold, you need to be able to convert it into a divisible, usable amount. Like, say, gold is worth so much. If you have this much gold, it's like thousands of Australian dollars. How are you meant to use that to go to the supermarket to buy a dozen eggs and a loaf of bread? It's not realistic. It's just not realistic at all. It's not usable like that. And if you were, even if you, what are you going to do? Make like these tiny, tiny, tiny little coins to carry them around, and each one's worth to make $1 coin. It's just not practical whatsoever. And portable, well, no, not really, because it's heavy. That's why they stopped moving it. Just look at history, please. Just look at the history. That's why the whole idea about receipts in the paper, right? It's saying, okay, you deposit your gold and silver in this bank. The money changes. We're going to protect it, keep it safe for you, and we'll give you this paper that represents the gold and silver you've put in here, right? That's a huge reason why gold and silver is not a good money. Because it's not portable. And it's hard to divide. No, it's not very good. In the past, well, what other alternatives did we have? Not many, if any. You know, you got a tally stick. But in today's age, with the technology we have, and with the history we have behind us to look at it, and the ideas of the future, even the bad ideas, the crypto space, like there are lots of good things that are happening there that can be transferred over to a good idea. We just need to build a good idea. Fungible, yes, it's fungible as long as it's the same quality of gold. Because if it's different quality, well then it's not fungible. Continue.
It's limited in quantity. That's the reason that it maintains its purchasing power. Governments cannot print it. Over the last 5,000 years, only gold and silver have maintained their purchasing power. There have been thousands upon thousands of fiat currency.
That's true. Governments can't print it, but it takes big companies to mine it. Like you and me aren't just going to go out to Swan Hill and start sifting for gold. Like maybe we can, but the amount we're going to get is probably not enough. So that's also a big problem, because when hoarding happens, and we know for a fact hoarding happens, that completely, sorry, not completely, but it severely delimits the monetary supply in circulation, because all the bad guys are hoarding that. So that means everyone else has less. If you were to consider the amount of gold and silver in the world today, I'm going to make an approximation here. It's not a statement of fact, but let's say 90% of the central banks in every country in the world, governments, and then IMF, BIS, World Bank, and then all the other cabal people, parasites, will be hoarding that gold, which would leave 10% for the rest of billions of people all over the world to use, which you could argue would be deflationary if people were actually going to use gold to spend it, but then there may not be enough. That's why there was problems in America when there wasn't enough gold and silver around. Well, actually, it was more so gold. That's why the Americans wanted to use silver, because it was a lot more populous than gold. But the English said, no, you can't do that. And they had the 1873 Coinage Act banning them from silver, and the Currency Acts before that started the revolution, etc.
These currencies that are unbacked by gold or silver, and they have all gone to zero. It's a 100% failure rate.
Well, fiat currency, of course, is a currency that exists at the dictate or by fiat from a government. You see, they have their printing presses, and the paper money rolls off the printing presses. And then they give it the fiat designation, which makes the currency official. It's just worthless paper. But when Ben Bernanke gives it the special sign, and they have the cult meeting at the Federal Open Market Committee meetings, it suddenly becomes currency.
Which really there's nothing wrong with. because money is just an idea. It's just a concept. It doesn't matter what it is. Well, ideally, it does, because you want to have those best characteristics. As long as it meets those characteristics, actually, I better introduce them now. So we went over quite a few of them before. Divisibility, it needs to be dividable. Like a horse isn't very dividable, or a house isn't very dividable. Needs to be fungible. So meaning every unit needs to be of the same value. That's why if you're trying to use horses as currency, which has been popular in the past, what happened was Gresham's law, where the bad money would push out the good money out of circulation. So people wouldn't want to spend or give away their good quality horses. They'd give away the lame and the nags, the old useless horses, and they'd use that, and that would push out the good money, the good horses, right? Because if you make an agreement with someone and you say you're going to pay them 10 horses for this piece of land you're buying or whatever it is, then why would you give them good horses if you could give them rubbish horses that you don't want anyway, that are sickly or old? Fungibility, that is showing that horses are not a fungible currency, whereas gold is. Any fiat currency is fungible. Bitcoin is. All cryptos are fungible, because each unit, one Bitcoin, $1, 1 gram of silver or gold, if it's the same quality, all equals the same value. So fungibility is an important thing. You need portability. So it needs to be portable, which you can also call exchangeability, like ease of exchangeability. Gold, I can't send you gold. Like if I want to pay someone non-locally, then you need a better system. You need digital to be able to do it instantaneously, to buy off eBay or Amazon or Uber, whatever, which all these things are very important in today's age. We're not going to devolve and go backwards. We need to evolve and go forward. So physical items as money is not portable enough to keep up with today's trend of moving technology and convenience. So some people say, oh, convenience is a bad thing. Well, there's context. You have to have the right context, because in some contexts, convenience is very good. If I want to do a deal and buy 1,000 tons of steel from another country so then I can import it into Australia to build all this fantastic stuff for the people there, then I need to be able to send that money digitally over to Iraq, where I want to import their steel, because they're making really cheap steel. You know, it's probably the other way around. Australia is doing the cheaper steel. But anyway, if I want to use gold, well, my goodness, you have to just imagine that. Think about it. You have to get the gold. You have to put it on a plane or a ship. You need to guard that, because it's at such high risk of being stolen. You have to pay all these guards. You have to pay for the transportation to get it over there. The ship could sink. The plane could crash. Oh, terrible. Not a good idea. I get it. Back in the day when you have no other choice, well, you have no other choice. Today, we have a choice. And then some people might argue, well, we can just use digital certificates of gold and silver. Well, it's like, just use fiat currency then. It's essentially just fiat currency, except real fiat currency doesn't have the limitations of needing a backing. The best fiat currencies, as I said in the last video, were the ones that were made by governments, like in America, the Continental and the Greenbacks, because the government just made it by decree, which is fine, which is okay, because anyone can make a currency by decree. Look at Bitcoin and all the thousands of other cryptos, just fiat meaning let it be done. That's okay, by decree, this is going to be money. It's only really money or currency, same thing, if people accept it and trust it and use it as such. Gold and silver is only money because that's what people have agreed upon. It's really quite simple. I just want to touch on divisibility again. Think of Bitcoin, right? One Bitcoin worth 90,000 Australian dollars at the moment, approximately. If that wasn't divisible into Satoshis, and which is basically the decimal points and zeros after the one Bitcoin, I believe it goes up to 8 different zeros. So when you actually look at it, there's 21 million Bitcoin, but actual units of Bitcoin in total with all the Satoshis, I think there's like, I did the calculations a while ago, but there's about a couple quadrillion. Divisible, that's why it needs to be divisible, because if you only had one Bitcoin for $90,000, again, you're trying to buy a computer game online, which I have done before, I tested that and it worked, but it was slow and cost way too much for the transaction fees, even using the Lightning Network. We've gone over portability, fungibility. It needs to be scarce. So there needs to be either a cap on it, like Bitcoin. See, that's another good idea, because then the currency becomes deflationary, which means that it will increase in value over time, and one unit of whatever that currency is will always be able to buy you more because the prices will drop in comparison. So you have scarcity, and with gold and silver there is scarcity because it does take time and effort to mine it, but the supply is always increasing, typically about 1 to 2% per year, whereas with traditional fiat currency printed by governments, well, printed by the central banks that have control over the governments, then there's too much supply, and it's just inflating, and the percentages is going up and up and up, compared to back in the old days where the governments were actually able to only print enough to be able to keep a stable value. They weren't printing too much. And you can find this on, I'll show you. I'm pretty sure it's on this page here. If you want to read more or learn more about that, go to Wikipedia and read about early American currency. There's a lot of info there that'll tell you a lot. And then you can go into detail. You've got the United States note, the greenback, demand note, Federal Reserve note, and then I was looking at the list of oldest banks in continuous operation, and I said in the last video, yes, the Swedish Riksbank was the first central bank, but you actually had these older banks in Germany and Italy, but they were amount of piety, so different types of banks, Bank of England, Bretton Woods, Federal Reserve. So if you want to learn more, there's heaps of good information on Wikipedia. Obviously, though, you do need to read through the lines at some point, but most of it seems quite accurate. But they just put their opinion on what is apparently facts. Right. So a currency needs to be scarce, otherwise it loses its value. Currency also needs to be hard to counterfeit. This is another characteristic of money. An example is when people used to use seashells as a currency. This isn't really counterfeiting, but you could always just go to the shore and just pick up more seashells and just ridiculously inflate the currency and again drop the worth. You can also have even coins, like gold and silver coins and paper money that can be too easily counterfeited. And the way they do it with the coins is they use some other metal that looks like the gold and silver and have the same weight, and they just print it because the designs on those specific coins weren't very intricate, so they could easily just make their own printing press. I don't know how easily that actually was to do, but they were able to do that, and then they could counterfeit the coins. And then today with types of currency, with the paper notes, some people with the right technology can counterfeit it. That's why with the notes they put all these security aspects into it with the clear color plastic parts. Australian notes are actually very good compared to most currencies in the world, because most currencies, the paper money, it's crap, like you can just tear it, it's little shitty paper, whereas Australian notes are like plastic. It's very hard to tear it or burn it or to break them, and which also means it's harder to counterfeit, because you don't want a currency to be counterfeited, because that's a war tactic. Like I explained in the last video, with the English, when they were waging war and just trying to control America, they would counterfeit their money, say like with the greenbacks with Abe Lincoln, which destabilizes their currency and lowers the value, which is not a good thing. So you need something which is very hard to counterfeit. Say Bitcoin. I think even Bitcoin is very hard to counterfeit, meaning you can't, hack the code or something and just make more Bitcoin appear. So that's what you need with a good digital currency. Any currency, it needs to be very hard to counterfeit. And the last 2 points of the characteristics of money is durability, which was discussed earlier here, and acceptability. So a currency needs to be durable. That's why a lot of these paper notes are really shit, because they're not durable. In America, they get rid of billions of dollars worth of their notes every year just because they're damaged and shit. And I don't think Australia would be doing that, though I'm not entirely sure. But think about it, like those notes would last for a long time. It's a better designed currency. So it needs to be durable. Gold and silver is durable. It can last a very long time. And then the last one is acceptability, because you could have the best currency in the world and it meets all the other requirements. But if no one accepts it, well, then it's worthless. It's not money because no one is actually accepting it. Whereas you go to prison, they use cigarettes as money, they use the mackerels as money. If we all just started to agree that basketballs are going to be money and going to be worth, a whole basketball is worth 10,000 tons of gold, like, and everyone agreed upon that, well then that's money, right? It's acceptable as money now. There's even been countries back in the day, they would use these massive stone rocks as money, seashells, rugs, like, all these different things. It's just what people accept and agree upon, which will be a form of payment, which will be money.
What's really going on? It's a con game. And so there's confidence. Well, the Federal Reserve is very forthright about what they're doing. If you read their websites, they'll tell you it's a confidence game. They tell you that there's no intrinsic value in their money. They'll tell you that they print it backed by absolutely nothing. They actually display all these facts. But if you tell somebody in the public that this stuff is created out of thin air, there's no backing whatsoever, it's absolutely worthless, it's about as valuable as monopoly money, they'll look at you like you're nuts.
Because in a way you are nuts. It does have worth, it does have value. Why? Because people trust that it does. That's where its intrinsic value comes from. And the biggest way governments do that, which is not a good way, but it's still true, objectively it's a fact, is they say this paper, this note, this money, this will be money now because it'll be acceptable as a form of payment of taxes. As people go, holy shit, I want that. Now it has value. It has intrinsic value. That is its value. It's more valuable than gold and silver today because you can't pay taxes with gold and silver. Or horses, or a bag of salt or anything else. You need that fiat, you need that notes or digital currency. So there is its intrinsic value because it's useful and it's acceptable. And it's more acceptable because the fiat, the printed paper, is a better form of money. It's more divisible, it's more portable, it's a better medium of exchange, it's more liquid because you also have liquidity. So you could have, for example, a painting, a picture of Van Gogh or the Mona Lisa, right? Yes, that's a good one. That has a lot of worth, it has a lot of value, right? But you can't go down to the store and swap it for a carton of eggs. And even if the person accepted that, which they probably would because they know they could resell it later on, doesn't matter if it took them 10 years to resell it, they'd still swap it for eggs. But you've just lost something that's worth, I don't know, millions or billions of dollars, however much that stupid painting is worth. It's an ugly painting, anyway. It's like another example is a castle. You could be very wealthy and you could still say you're broke. It's like, I've got a castle, but I've got no money. It's like, well, why don't you sell your castle? I don't want to sell the castle. Or you're trying to sell it. Here's a good example. Mike has a house and he's been trying to sell it for years now. And it's worth millions of dollars. So that's wealth there, but it's not liquid because it's very hard to turn into liquidity to a good quality medium of exchange to be able to buy inexpensive things, medium and expensive things. That's what you want. You need something not that's so valuable you can only buy houses and land and property with it, but you need something where you can buy your bread and your milk and your eggs and your meat and your tea towels and your scissors and sausages, whatever else you want. You need a currency that's good across the board, and that fiat currency can do that. Especially with digital, it's so much easier because if you're trying to buy a house, well, say you're trying to buy a dozen eggs with fiat, yeah, it's easy, it's only a couple notes. But if you're trying to buy a house, well, you need a huge stack of notes. But with digital, it's super easy, whether it's the dozen eggs, whether it's a car or a house. The digital is far superior. And that's where it's getting its intrinsic value from, is its idea, its conceptualization of just how good it is, its value. Its value as the purpose of a money. And a money is just an invention, it's a concept, it's an idea that people have created, it's an agreement. That's what it is. And whatever is able to fulfill those functions, really, of what humans need, right, to help each other with the division of labor, then that money is going to be more valuable. So I don't think intrinsic value means necessarily something which is physical that has multiple purposes. That's narrowing it down. That's different. You can call a currency like gold physical with multiple purposes. Cool. But you can't say that has intrinsic value where this type of money, this fiat, doesn't have intrinsic value, because really it's got more intrinsic value. Like, it's easier to use, it's more convenient, it's just a better quality money. The store of value isn't as good as gold or silver, I'll give it that, but the other positive aspects really do outweigh those negatives. And the best currency, again, was in America when the government was just making it. Why was it so good? Because they weren't borrowing it at interest, perpetually creating a never-ending debt owed to the private Rothschilds bankers or any central bank, whoever is running it. Doesn't matter if it's Rothschilds or Humphrey Bear. Doesn't matter. The central bank system which owns and controls the governments.
Is there an example throughout history of a fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked?
Also, I'll say what was all extra good about those currencies that the Americans had with the greenback and the continentals is that it wasn't backed. That's the point. That's a good thing, because if you have to back it with gold and silver, well, then you have to go to war. Because where are you going to get that gold and silver from? Other countries who are hoarding it. You have to kill them to take it, and then to be able to create a money that's backed by something. It's a really, really bad idea. Again, in the past, yes, they had no other option. But today, when you can see it clearly, how are you going to have you as an individual, or as a small company of a couple hundred people, or as a country, if you were going to be on a full gold or silver standard, where are you going to get enough gold and silver just for one country, big or small? Oh, obviously the smaller country you'd be able to do it, but if a bigger country like America or Australia is a lower population but still enough, China, India, etc., where are you going to get enough gold from to be able to then issue notes that are backed by that gold? You're not going to be able to do it unless you go to war. And that's what practically history is. It's a history of money, of trying to hoard all this gold and silver and then killing each other for it, so then they could escalate and develop their scam over time, which earlier on in 17 to 1900s approximately was when they were really perpetuating the scam of needing a gold and silver backing, because that gave them control, and that's what everyone was believing and thinking how money needs to work at that time, until they evolved past that with the central bankers saying, hey, we don't even need this, we're just going to print it on demand, but at interest. We're basically going to copy what the American governments did, and I'm sure that happened in other places in the world, where the government would just print the money, issue that out, there's no interest, which means obviously the taxes, which are wrong in the first place, but the tax is going to be a lot lower, because you don't have a huge debt that you need to increase the taxes to repay. Okay? So that's another very important point. Just think about that. Don't just listen to what I'm saying and take it on faith. Think about that. Run all these different scenarios and simulations through your mind, and think about it and see the problems and listen to other people and compute all this knowledge and information together. Oh, that sounds fun, doesn't it? But it takes time and energy. That's all it takes, really. Anyway, we all have that. So, continuing.
Fiat currency, a piece of paper that's unbacked by anything, surviving?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. And here's why. When Addison Wiggin took over at the Daily Record, when they got cranked up, Bill Warner asked him to catalog all of the fiat currencies throughout history and what happened to each of them. Addison dutifully went to work. Within a short period of time, he had gone through the alphabet. All the fiat currencies that started with the letter A were done. They all went to zero. He was halfway through the letter B, and all the fiat currencies that started with the letter B, and there were 600 of them in just the first letter and a half of the alphabet, and every single one of them went to zero. Every one. 600 fiat currencies that start with the letter A, and half of the ones that start with the letter B are 600 of these things. Not one ever came close. You think this one, the United States dollar, is going to be the first one after all that? I don't think so. No. No currency, fiat currency, has ever survived. None.
Why? Why? And I practically explained it earlier with what happened in America when they were making their Continentals and Greenbacks. Well, because the central bankers didn't want them to keep that fiat currency that wasn't backed by anything, because they knew it was too good of a system and they couldn't control it. That's why they had the backing system of gold and silver, so they could control it. And then once they did have control in enough areas across the world, then they moved to the total fiat, just printing, not even really caring about having a backing or a gold standard or reserves, etc. Right? That's why these fiat currencies that weren't backed went to zero. A lot of them were probably just shit and they just failed of their own accord, but the ones that were good were deliberately attacked because they were the way a money should be, or the better ways that we know. In many, many years from now, because again, money is just an invention. It's an idea, it's a concept. Just like a laptop and a computer was shit 10, 20 years ago, and it's a lot better now. They're going to be a lot better in the future. Same with money. We could perhaps make it better and better and better and better and better. If we don't, well, if we're able to break free of the centralization of the central banks and the insecurity, etc., the control. Otherwise, it's just going to keep getting worse and more complicated and more ensnaring and encircling and just devolve us even further. All right, continue.
The thing about money is there actually is a fairly well accepted definition of what money is. The question is, as you apply that definition to particular things that people claim to be money, do they fit the definition? We'll just take the paper dollar, for example. How well does it perform those functions? Well, store of value. The dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power since the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. So not very good as a store of value. One of the things I do is...
Yes, that is true. It is not the best as a store of value. That's right. Over time, it does depreciate. But I mean, your $20 you have today is still going to be worth $20 tomorrow. Like, it'll take a couple months or years for that $20 that did buy you 3 dozen eggs to only buy you 2.5. It does take time. So it is obviously a store of value, but it's not the best store of value. Your money should ideally be deflationary. Your $20 should buy you 5 dozen eggs in the future, not 2.5. You know, you should be able to buy more with your money because technology is deflationary and prices should fall to the marginal cost of production. Meaning that when technology improves and ideas get better and businesses get more efficient, being able to do more for less, then prices drop because there's competition, even in a world of tyranny and not a true laissez-faire capitalistic world or any country. There is still competition, which is really good, which makes their competition and people drive the prices to the bottom. Apparently, the calculator app, you used to have to pay for that, but then so many people were making it, it eventually just becomes free. Same with digital cameras, you know, you had to pay for those. And then now we have a phone. Obviously, you still can get a digital camera and the quality's better, but you can take amazing photos and videos on your phone. And just look at the quality of things and the amount of things you can have in your phone. Make calls, the internet, social media, posts and video and GPS and banking. There's so much stuff you can do with that, right? So prices should fall to the marginal cost. Well, forget the word marginal. That makes it sound more complicated than it is. The prices should fall to the cost of production. Whatever it costs to produce something, prices should eventually fall in most industries. Though if you look at a lot of industries, or that's not the right word, aspects of society like housing, that just keeps on going up and up and up, which is not good when it should be going down and down and down as technology improves and it becomes easier and easier and shorter to build a house. Why is it going up and up and up? Oh, problem. Okay.
Just a way to get the audience's attention is I have a slide, and there are 3 pictures on the slide. One is a pile of monopoly money. The other one is a pile of Federal Reserve notes, what Americans would call paper money. And the other one is a solid gold American Eagle 1-ounce coin. And the title of the slide is Which of These is Not Like the Other? And if you know the show Sesame Street, or you have children who watch it, it's one of the favorite vignettes in Sesame Street. And what it really is a kind of IQ test for 5-year-olds. They're supposed to look at the three things and look at characteristics and find the one that's not like the other. Well, I've shown this slide to groups of Ivy League University professors, and I've also shown it to children, kind of 5 years old, my nieces and nephews and so forth. And when the professors look at it, they say, well, clearly the dollars are not like the others, because gold has no role as money, and monopoly money is junk, and the American dollar is a store of value, so that's not like the other. But the children look at it and they say, well, the gold coin is not like the other, because the other two are just piles of paper, and the gold coin is clearly something different. So my question to the audience is, who's smarter, a 5-year-old or an Ivy League professor?
That's wrong. The monopoly money is not like the others. Why? Because US $50 notes, $150, has value, and you can buy things with that. 150 the same value with monopoly money. Who's going to accept that? It's not acceptable. The gold coin, same thing. You could go to someone and buy something with that gold coin, or you could sell it and turn it into a more liquid form like US dollars, and then actually exchange it use it as a medium of exchange to get other things that you really want. With the monopoly money, you can't do that. That's the one that's different. It doesn't matter that this US dollars is made out of paper or bloody snot. The fact is, it's acceptable as a form of value, and that is a fact. Whether it's US dollars or Turkish lira, Australian dollars, what country I'm in Albania now, Albanian lek, doesn't matter. It's accepted, right? Until a currency hyperinflates, which has happened like in Venezuela. I think that's happened in Germany at some point. It happened in too many countries, unfortunately. That's when it becomes valueless. Otherwise, it is money, it is currency, it works as the functions of money demand, as a store of value, a unit of account, and a medium of exchange. Unit of account, I'm not sure if I explained that in the past, I think I did, but basically it means if you want to buy a dozen eggs and you're in Australia, it is $3.50, right? If no one used fiat money, Australian dollars, and everyone was bartering, well, it depends what you have on offer. You go, oh, I got a pizza. Can I swap that for the dozen eggs? And the person says, oh, I don't eat carbs. I don't want the pizza. Oh, okay. Well, what about I give you 2 oranges? And they say, okay, but I want 5 oranges. Okay, here's 5 oranges for this dozen eggs. And then someone else comes along and say, okay, I'll pay you five oranges for this another dozen eggs. Someone else is saying this now, right? And that person says, well, I don't need any more oranges. I've already got 5 from the previous dude. I don't want another 5 oranges because they'll rot. I can't eat that many in such a short time. So that's not a good form of payment. You're going to need to give me something else. Oh, okay, I'll give you a chair. Do you want a chair for a dozen eggs? Yeah, okay, I'll do that, right? So how much does the dozen eggs cost? Well, it depends. A chair, 5 oranges, it depends. So it's not good. But when you use a currency, money, then it's $3.50. Or even gold and silver, it's 1 gram of silver, 1 gram of gold, it's 2 coins, whatever. Then it's a unit of account. Basically a measuring standard. It's a measurement. Like money works as a measurement of value, just like centimeters or kilos or hertz or any other measurement standard. That's what money acts as, which helps us a lot tremendously. Imagine trying to buy a dozen eggs. Do you want the 5 oranges or the chair? You say, oh no, I've already got the chair, I've already got 5 oranges. Oh, 2 tea towels? Yeah, okay, give me 2 tea towels. My God. How do you know what to take with you down to the shop to be able to get your dozen eggs? My goodness, what a pain in the ass.
Who's smarter, a 5-year-old or an Ivy League professor?
Before World War I, each note that a treasury issued would say that there have been deposited with the United States Treasury $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer upon demand. The money was in the vault. The currency was a note they gave you that was a claim check, only a claim check on the money, the same as if you go to the dry cleaners and you give them your shirt and they give you a claim check for your shirt.
This is the same thing. The note has value because it's accepted as value. The gold only has value because it's accepted as value. I think the problem is here, it's a high-level abstract concept, and all concepts are hierarchical and contextual, and they're built upon layers and layers and layers, and money is a very high-level concept, which is why it's so difficult for most people, even learned people on the topic, to actually understand. And what I mean by a hierarchically high concept, it's like to understand culture, for example. How do you understand culture without first understanding art, manners, men, women, countries, geography, location, which is geography? There's all these prerequisite concepts you need to understand before you can understand culture. Or capitalism. Like, that's a very high concept. Let's bring it down to earth a little bit. Table. That's something that's a very basic, perceivable object. You can just point at it. You can communicate that to people who don't even speak your own language. If you want to buy a chicken, and you're in any country in the world, you just go into a butcher's, and if you're trying to say, I want some chicken, and they don't understand, you just go, bah, bah. You know, and they're like, oh, chicken, you want chicken, easy, right? But if you try and talk to anyone who doesn't understand your language, and you say, I support laissez-faire free market capitalism, and they don't, where do you point at that? You can't point to it. You've got to understand all these different concepts in between. It's like with the table. Then a higher abstraction away from table is furniture. And to understand furniture, well, you have to understand that there's more than just tables. There's tables, there's chairs, there's benches, there's all these other things that build up furniture. And then from furniture, you could have household items, and then you can go further into art. And so money is a very high-level concept that has so many prerequisite concepts to understand. Like, it's too much for me to even think about on the spot. All these other things that, well, not really. You need to think of a medium of exchange, which you need to have experience in reality, that there must be a division of labor, because you can't do everything by yourself, and a division of labor leads to a much higher quality of life. Otherwise, you're left trying to figure out everything by yourself, and your chances of survival decrease, and your chances of depression and having a shitty life because you can't figure out everything you need to do to survive. Oh man, it's just no good. So yes, the paper has value, the gold has value. Yes, the paper was a representation of the gold. That's what it was, but it still has the same value as the gold.
Value is that shirt at the dry cleaners, not the piece of paper that says that you own that shirt. So our currency that circulated was the paper US dollars, and they were claim checks on money.
The next hidden secret is the difference between currency and money. Money must be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. As we progress through this series, you'll learn that national currency is a tool used by the government and the financial sector to leech away your time and your freedom by stealing your purchasing power. So rather than storing your economic energy, currencies leak. Now,
but yes, but only because of the central banks. It's not the governments only by themselves doing that.
Compare that to the gold and silver the Egyptians were using. Like I started with, it still wasn't money because it wasn't interchangeable yet. But they were on the right track, as gold and silver have proven over thousands of years to be the ultimate store of value. Gold is only formed when a star explodes.
So why wasn't the gold and silver in the Egyptian times money yet? Because they hadn't agreed upon that. They hadn't had enough time and experience actually using and thinking about this new concept called money and seeing what works and what doesn't work, what's good, what's bad. That's why it wasn't money. It was only when they figured out all the problems and overcame the challenges that then it became recognized as money, because then people started believing and trusting that it had value to it. And then that's how it became money. That's how cigarettes become money in prison, or tin cans of mackerel, or whatever.
You know, people are amazed that after 5,000 years, the pyramids are still here. But what I'm more amazed at is that the currency that the people that built this were using, that currency, that gold and silver that they were using in trade on a daily basis, is still around today.
I just want to show you the pyramids, because I've been there very recently from this video, actually, a couple of weeks ago. It's really not that special. You see down the bottom, that's where all the big slabs are, the big rocks. And before I went there, that's what I thought the whole thing was going to be. But as you see, when you go up, they get smaller and smaller and more out of shape, and just, it literally just looks like a pile of rocks dumped on top of each other, and anyone could have done it. That's what it looks like. I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's just the first impression you get, especially when you had all these other higher standards of what they were, because the pyramids are the most famous buildings in the world. So you have high expectations. My expectations were absolutely shattered, especially with all the bloody scammers there. Do you want camel or horse? You want camel, you want horse? My goodness, like you get asked that about, I was going to say thousands of times, no, but perhaps 100 times at least. That's a lot.
Is still around today. It may have been melted down and re-refined, and it's in a coin or a bar or in some piece of jewelry, but it's still with us today, and it still purchases something.
Yes, it is the ultimate money because there is nothing else even in the same league. It's divisible, it's permanent, it's a store of value, it's a unit of account. It's got everything you want out of money, but it doesn't go away and it can't be increased.
It's got everything you want if you're a central bank and if you're a bunch of bad dudes who have a plan that it doesn't matter if it takes millennia to implement. Then it's really good. But if you're everyone else, the other 99.9, actually maybe not that high, 98% of people in the world, then no, it's not good.
That is what makes gold the most beautiful money of all. What more could you ask out of a money?
It keeps governments under control. You can maintain a solvent system. Governments don't like gold at present because they're getting away with the fiat currencies, and they'll do everything they can to discredit it as an asset class. I mean, my goodness, gold has outperformed the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
He said governments don't like gold. Yes, well, because they've been there, they've done that. Well, the central banks, the government's just a front. Nothing, really. They've gone through the whole gold and silver process to get to where they want. So, yeah, why would they like it when they've got better systems, even better than gold and silver now? In the past, yeah, super good. Now, not so much.
Each of the last 7 years, yet it's not considered a legitimate asset class. Why? Again, it's the fear that maybe gold will be imposed on the system, that it will constrain government ability to spend beyond its means.
They can't print it.
They can't print it, no.
No, it wouldn't work like that because you have fractional reserve lending. Even if they went back to a gold standard, they've got 1 ton. They'd say, oh, fractional reserve lending, they could just make up whatever number they want and say, yes, you only need 1 ton to then print an equivalent 1,000 times more money or 1 million. They just, whatever they want, with then fractional reserve amplify and multiply. Doesn't matter. Wouldn't hold them back at all. They could say you only need 1 gram of gold and then we can make $10 billion. Meh, okay, we make the rules. That's our ideas, that's how it works. Doesn't matter. 1 gram or 10,000 tons of gold, doesn't matter.
The proper definition of inflation, I use Milton Friedman's definition. Inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Deflation is a contraction of the currency supply. If you expand the currency supply, eventually prices will rise, and if you contract the currency supply, eventually prices will fall. This is a pool, but it's not a pool of water, this is the currency pool, and these are prices. And if you expand the currency supply, prices like a sponge in water have to rise to suck up the excess currency. Governments never stop printing more currency and adding currency to circulation. Therefore, prices keep on going up, not because the stuff that you're trying to buy is changing. The real estate doesn't change. What has changed is the currency purchases less and less. It's the currency going down, not prices going up.
The truth is, what we have that makes our world work right now is a big story. None of it's real. It's all just promises. And if you think about it, that's how currency began to work.
So when people say it's not real, what do they mean? Like, real is that which is reducible back to perceivable reality. Money is extremely real. You can see it, you can hold it, you can feel it, you can have it in your bank account, you can send it to people. It works as all functions of money, as a store of value, as a unit of account, as a medium of exchange. It's absolutely real. What do you mean it's not real? That's an inaccurate thing to say. And it's not, what do you mean it's a story? No, it's an invention. That's what it is. It's a means of dividing labour.
In the beginning, before we had currency, we had barter. I'll give you 3 coconuts and you give me 4 fish, because that's kind of a fair exchange on coconuts to fish. But that got complicated, so we had to invent this thing called money to be a divisible, portable medium of exchange. And the challenge is that we lost that a long time ago. We lost having things of value be our currency. And now we have this thing called numbers and accounts. But trust me, it is not real. It's a big made-up story.
Okay, what he means by real is it means non-physical. Non-physical, and he thinks intrinsic value, but which really just means physical multi-purpose. That's a limitation that people seem to have for some reason because they've learned it from someone else and they haven't analyzed it objectively and pulled it apart and said, hold on. And the reason why these people don't know this is because they've never tried to make their own money. When you try and think about making your own money or a currency to be a fully decentralized, stable, etc., a good quality money that meets all the functions and characteristics of money, that's when you really get a good grasp on this stuff. And I've been doing that for a while now. So that's probably why I can see this stuff so clearly, and these people who have been doing this for a lot longer than me can't. Although I've only just started learning about money recently. I'm still very new to this because I hated money for a long, long time because I saw it as the ultimate lever for evil. Ultimate lever. You know, if you want to commit evil, you pull that lever of money. There's nothing which enables you to do evil more so than money. Because what's the most powerful thing you can do with money? Buy thugs. What do thugs do? Commit atrocities.
We lost that a long time ago. We lost having things of value be our currency. And now we have
value to a valuer. You need to have a valuer. If that person who wanted the fish for the coconuts, right? If they don't want coconuts, then that has no value, right? The only reason anyone would have gold and carry it around, for example, it's like if you carry around gold, you know, if I was to do that, I don't want to carry around that like a useless piece of metal. I don't want it. I don't want to make jewelry out of or use it in technology. I got no use for that. The only reason I hold it is because I believe, or I don't believe, sorry, I have confidence and trust and I know that other people find it valuable. Value is subjective until it becomes objective, and it only becomes objective when a large enough group of people all believe, all trust, because believe is to have trust with basically no evidence, whereas the trust is belief in something with evidence, same as confidence. Let me expand on that a little bit quicker because they keep saying the word belief, trust, and confidence with money. If I suck at basketball, right? If I went into the court and I had faith and belief that I was going to get the basketball in the hoop, well, that's just blind faith. That's just belief. Why would I have that? But if I was Michael Jordan, I went onto the basketball court and threw it, well, I wouldn't have belief or faith I'm going to get it in. I'd have trust and confidence. Why? Because there's evidence. He's a good basketball player. So that's the difference there with trust, belief, just very quickly. You can make a whole video about that. And you can make a series of videos about that. The value itself with money is coming from enough people subjectively believing or trusting that this currency, whatever it is, whichever country's fiat money or the gold or the silver has value, and then enough people, a large enough mass of people, trust that that thing is valuable enough to be a good form of exchange and will be acceptable, then it creates objective value. Bitcoin, for example, had no objective value when it was first launched. It was only subjective value, and they subjectively valued at very, very low, I don't know, cents or something for one Bitcoin. So Bitcoin only got objective value when enough people were aware of it, were buying into it, which created a rise in price, and then it gained an objective value, though that value is very volatile and it fluctuates daily or per second essentially. It still has an objective value, being that you can use that Bitcoin as a medium of exchange to buy real things of value that is actually valuable to you, like clothes or games or whatever, but it's not very widely accepted. But you can sell that Bitcoin into a better form of money, which is fiat currency. Any country in the world, well, actually, some fiat is obviously better than others. Like the Egyptian pound is a terrible country. Well, it's a terrible country as well, but it's a terrible currency. And they hate the Egyptian pound. They want US dollars all the time because it's a much better currency compared to Egyptian pound. But still, Egyptian pound is a lot more acceptable and usable than Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has a much higher objective value. But value with Bitcoin, US dollars, gold and silver, it all starts off as subjective value because it's only getting valuable because people are believing and then trusting that it has value. It's only when a large enough mass comes into being that it becomes objectively valuable. And the opposite can occur. It can go the other way as well, where enough people stop trusting that something has value. If like everyone in the world tomorrow said, gold's useless, it's valueless. Boom, there you go. Gold goes from whatever it is, how many thousands of dollars per gram or ounce at the moment, boom, to zero. Why? Because it's only getting its price and its value from people's trust and confidence that it has value. It's crazy. That's I get it, why this stuff is hard to understand, because it's so complex and it's so hierarchically distant from easily to observe and perceive physical reality. It's abstract, an abstraction upon abstraction upon abstractions to understand the high-level concept of money.
This thing called numbers and accounts, but trust me, it is not real. It's a big made-up story.
One of the biggest make-believe stories ever is called quantitative easing.
Don't trust people. Trust the facts.
Which sounds complex, but it's really just a smoke and mirrors term for currency creation. QE started with the banking bailouts back in 2009. This currency was created out of thin air and then given to the banks, who paid themselves record bonuses in reward for crashing the world economy. This is a global phenomenon, but all you have to remember for now is that whether it's QE bailouts or stimulus programs, these are all just voodoo, hocus-pocus terms for increased currency creation.
I believe gold and silver will reassert themselves as money. And when they do, there just isn't enough. And their purchasing power is going to go up many, many, many times.
And that is true. If it did go back to gold and silver, there isn't enough because it's been hoarded, the value would rise, which means it's so much more difficult to divide into useful amounts, especially with gold, because gold is much more valuable, a higher price than silver. It'd become near useless at how valuable it'd get. This much gold would be worth $1 million. You're like, well, how am I meant to use this in everyday life? It's unusable. So it's absolutely terrible.
Egypt is an amazing place. There's a franticness about it, and utter chaos, especially like the traffic. But when it comes to like all of the merchants that are trying to get every last dime out of you, you get fleeced to the point where you come back with an empty wallet.
He's a sucker. He's a sucker.
But you know what? They're amateurs compared to Wall Street.
In the past several years, I've spoken in many countries about the crisis that's coming, and a lot of people think that they're going to be okay in their country, that it's only going to happen to the United States, or maybe the United States in Europe. But what they don't realize is that this is a global phenomenon. I got to show you something here. This is base currency in the United States. This is the number of paper dollars that exist, basically. It took 200 years to go from no dollars in existence to 825 billion. And then we had the bailouts, and then we had QE1, quantitative easing 1, then QE2, and then we had QE3, and then QE4, and then soon we're going to have QE57 and QE382. And it isn't just here. This is what the Canadian currency supply looks like. This is Australia, South Africa, Russia. Now, this starts out in just the year 2001, and this is like 18 times more currency in existence in a little over a decade. Here's Singapore, same story. Look at that, since the crisis, just bam. India, China, every government on the planet is doing this insane deficit spending and expanding their currency supplies, doing bailouts, and history shows that there is no example of this turning out well.
It is sometimes amazing that...
Yeah, obviously, centralized money is not good because of the amount it inflates. That's why we need a proper, good quality money. And my suggestion again is an alternative digital currency. The system I'm working on very slowly is called the Freedom Credit.
We haven't experienced more inflation than we have. If they keep expanding the money supply so vastly, why aren't our prices growing faster than they really are? And the answer is that a good chunk of the money that the Fed created has been shipped overseas. I remember early in my research, I heard this expression that the Americans have exported their inflation. I thought, What is that? How can you export your inflation? Put it in a box and send it, what do you do? Well, now I understand. You export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to these other countries, and then they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So you get hardware, and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. For a while. Sooner or later, all of those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's now coming, when the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore, Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless, there are too many of them, we've got to find something else other than American dollars, then those dollars start to come back to America. People, we don't want them anymore. What do we do with them? Once this revs up and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us, and then we'll see the quantity of money inside the United States grow much more rapidly even than the Federal Reserve can create it, because we're getting a previous money back. And that's when we will really see the tanking of the U.S. dollar in terms of what it will buy.
During the second round of quantitative easing, global food prices went up 60%. And this created a humanitarian disaster for the 2 billion people on Earth who live on less than $2 a day. These people were hungry to start with, they became hungrier, and some of them started overthrowing their governments in North Africa and around the Middle East. So quantitative easing was the spark that ignited the Arab Spring. So that's it. When you create money, you get some sort of inflation. It just depends on where the inflation goes.
It's all going down, down, down. Peasants are reeling from a game of coins and crowns.
Given the premise that you have a permanent underclass or poor class, and how does inflation affect them disproportionately? It affects them basically in the percentage of their income that goes to food. And we see this as a ratio, and we know that there are some danger points. For example, in Egypt recently, once that ratio got to 40% of income going to food and the price of food rising due to inflation, when it got to 40%, that's historically a point where people actually stage a revolution. And that's exactly what we saw. The French Revolution, similarly, was all around the price of food, getting to a certain critical point where people simply, the risk-reward for revolution was favorable toward revolution.
When they print it up, then it all goes.
It's good they're doing something, but obviously this isn't the right answer, because you need to create an entire new system and not get on your knees and beg. But at the same time, it's also really bad, because what the cabal has done through these experiments has learned where the shifting points are. So in the future, when they're gaining more and more control, they know where the lines are and to stay just below the lines. So there isn't revolution, there's no resistance, because they can make it really, really, really bad, but not so bad that people do anything about it, because they've found all these lines from all this testing and experimenting in all these different countries over a long period of time.
Well, exactly right, because when you have a runaway inflation, it's punishing the very people who are most productive in society. In other words, the people that produce more than they consume and save the difference. The problem is that those productive people, the savers, save in their national currency. And unfortunately, the national currency is just a fiat piece of paper at this point. So when it's destroyed through runaway inflation, that $100,000 that you were...
That's the wrong way to say it. That they store it in their fiat currency, and that's not good because it's fiat currency. And he should have said that's not good because the governments and the central banks are printing too much and inflating, therefore their fiat savings are losing their value. That's more accurate. That's why it's losing value, not because inherently it's fiat currency. It's because whoever the centralized command point controlling the fiat currency is not using it wisely. Well, wisely for them, but not objectively to the interests of everyone.
Hoping to retire on doesn't exist. And the things that you were going to buy with it and provide for others don't exist either. Now what are you going to do?
That all seems pretty scary. However, this is going to happen, and you can only play the hand that you're dealt. But the great news is that gold and silver always end up doing an accounting of the expansion of the currency supplies. Basically, the will of the public and the free markets. When governments do this kind of stuff to their currency supply, they debase it. Eventually it comes back in inflation. People sense the loss of their purchasing power. They rush back to gold and silver, and they bid the value of the gold and silver up in the country until it meets or exceeds the value of all the currency in circulation. This is a process that's been going on over and over again throughout history.
Holy crap, that is really bad, because if that happens, which I'm pretty sure it does, that just means whoever is holding the majority of the gold and silver is getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. Sure, those other individuals like you and me and whoever else who is holding some gold and silver, or that gets more valuable, but the people who are holding 90% of all of it, their wealth goes up and up and up. They're able to do more and more and more, control more land, more people, expand their power even further. That's bad. And you can see, he doesn't realize it, but that's obviously a pattern that happens. And every time it occurs, goes through that cycle he mentioned, the cabal is going to refine it and get better and better and better at breaking the backs of the people and filling their coffers.
Except this time it's happening on a global scale. It has never before happened in all countries at once. And that means that this is the greatest wealth transfer in history. Therefore, it's the greatest opportunity in history, and it's not going to happen again in your lifetime.
So now we've learned that your true wealth is your time and your freedom. Money is a trading tool that stores the economic energy that is your time and freedom, whereas currencies leak them away. Gold and silver are the ultimate money simply because of their properties. Fiat currencies are based solely on confidence and always return to their intrinsic value of zero. Governments don't like gold because it imposes restraint. Rising prices are a symptom of an expanding currency supply, and gold and silver always account for an expanding currency supply.
So that's it for this episode. Join me next time as we begin to investigate how monetary history just repeats and repeats, and how...
Okay, so I hope with all those things, those statements he made before, with what I've shared over the course of this video, you were able to answer them accurately yourself by that point. I'm not going to go over them again. Though I do want to say that was a very good video. There's a lot of good things to learn, and he's obviously put a hell of a lot of work and effort into making this video, so I commend him for that. And I'm just pointing out these mistakes because it needs to be done. We all make mistakes. I really do hope you've got some value from this. And I'm sure you disagree with many things in here, which is perfectly fine. That's a good thing. Being challenged is great because it helps you to understand what you know to a greater degree. It helps me do the same thing. And then it allows essentially like a dialectic process to happen, back and forwards, people challenging each other and saying, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, I'm wrong. And then, okay, hold on, let's have a look at the facts. Have you considered this fact? Oh, no, shit, I didn't consider that fact. Oh, you're right there. Okay, I changed my opinion. Boom. That's better. I was wrong there. That's right. That's better. I move this way. That's what we have to do. Overcome the ego. And the ego in this specific context really just means arrogance and fear of being shamed, right? Totally overcome that. Become confident in yourself because you have a high level of self-esteem, because you trust your mind and you trust reason and you don't believe stupid nonsense like religions or governments or bad philosophies, etc. Alright, anyway, philosophy is going to be coming soon. I'll be talking about that in some new videos. This might be enough about money for a while. Hope you've enjoyed it. Bye-bye.